SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Engineering, Medical and Health Sciences, Management, Dental, Science and Humanities, Law, Agriculture Sciences, Hotel Management. Admissions open.
Hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar on nurturing innovation potential in research. I am Shubhashri Desikan, Senior Assistant Editor with the Hindu Science Desk, and I will be moderating the discussion today. We have with us today a distinguished panel of speakers, each of whom has worked on different aspects of education and made very important contributions. We have first with us Dr. T. Ramasamy, who is the Naidoma Abdul Wahid Chair Professor at the Department of Leather Technology at Anna University, Chennai. He was the Secretary of Department of Science and Technology of the Government of India from 2008 to 2014. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Ramasamy. Dr. Leena Wadia is a Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation in Mumbai. She has been engaged in research and policy advocacy in the areas of education, renewable energy, public health, and sustainable agriculture. Notably, she has made very important contributions to the new education policy document. The primary focus of her work has been in higher education and research in India. Then and the next person I will introduce is Dr. Aar Ramanujam, who is a professor of theoretical computer science at the Institute of Mathematical Sciences, Chennai. He has been actively involved in the Tamil Nadu Science Forum and is editor of Tulir, a monthly children's magazine in Tamil that has been published for almost 30 years now. He was a member of the Yashpal committee that formulated the National Curriculum Framework in 2005. Dr. Ramanujam, in fact, has recently won the INSA Prize for Science Communication and is an excellent teacher and research guide. Dr. K. Ramasamy is the Director of Faculty and Academics at SRM Institute of Science and Technology, where he earlier served as Dean. He has been the two-term Vice Chancellor at the Tamil Nadu Agriculture University from 2009 to 2013. He's an author of 8 books and 152 research publications. He's won 21 awards and 2 medals and 6 fellowships. So he brings in quite an experience of work with industries too. Now, I've introduced the panelists to you, so let me not stand between you and them. Dr. T. Ramasamy, would you please take over and give your speech?
Good afternoon. Am I unmuted already?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Very good afternoon, and it's an opportunity and a pleasure to meet some old friends, Dr. K. Ramaswamy and Ramanujam, and it's a truly a pleasure indeed. Thank you, Subhasri and Dr. Maria, and of course the entire the authorities of SRM and the Hindu and organizers of this conference. Of course, I see the other panelists have prepared some PowerPoint presentations and all that. I'm a very powerless guy, so I have not made any PowerPoint material to you. Neither I'm going to talk to you today about the education. The education is a much larger aspect of preparation of mind. And I stick myself to the title of the webinar, Nurturing Innovation Potential of Researchers and of course for students. When you talk about nurturing, anybody would say it's a process. It's a process of development, and we talk about nurturing of a child, and innovation in that sense is an innovation potential. It's also like a child being developed, and how do we build a process for this process. When you talk about innovation potential, I believe that every human being is endowed with that potential. The spirit of inquiry is not just created in the college and schools and so on. So the innovation potential is an aspect of human civilization itself. If the early man had not found a way to build fire, there'd be no civilization. That was an innovation. So how do we truly spot the innovation potential in a learner, in an educational enterprise? And how do we nurture them is an issue. And when I talk about the researchers, I like to enlarge the researchers community, also to include those who do research in real life, in farm fields, for example. I'm aware that the National Innovation Foundation, an autonomous body of the Department of Science and Technology, that I served during 2006 to 14, gave me a fantastic view of the world view of innovation potential. In 1 year, we recorded 176,000 innovations in the informal sector. Somebody who had never been to college building a windmill out of truly bamboos from Northeast. Therefore, the innovation potential, in my opinion, resides in a large number of people. And in a research environment where inquiry-led process and the logic-driven processes are really the grammar, when the students are being nurtured, we need to ask what is it that we do? And how do we create that nurturing process? But before I move on to the nurturing as a process, I'd like to flag a specific question to all of us. The way innovation today has become a buzzword. Everybody wants to use the word innovation. And we celebrate the process of innovation, process of nurturing. I think we need to ask what the purpose of innovation. There needs to be a purpose for most actions. Very many times, if the process of innovation is highlighted, and you back it up with huge amount of resource through what we call R&D funding, the reservations resulting from high investments bypass more than 2/3 of the global population. Therefore, we need to ask, how do we build affordability in innovation as an integral part of the process itself? On that point, I'll come back a little later. I believe we are one of the few countries. We built this science policy systems. We are probably the first nation developing country in 1958 set up the scientific policy resolution. As a development, it was even ahead of the NSF's Bushel Document. Then we had a technology policy statement of 1983. Then we had the science technology policy of 2003. We have the prevailing the science technology innovation policy of the year 2013, which is a current policy. And the government today is embarked upon revising this science technology innovation policy in the year 2020. The process is on at the moment. Therefore, it is appropriate at this point of time to talk about the nurturing process, especially in a community of researchers housed in educational enterprises. The way STIP 2013 approached innovation, we actually defined innovation in the document itself, what we refer to as innovation in the context of research. We said it's the first application of knowledge for creation of wealth or social value. It is not just new knowledge. The new knowledge needs to be applied first time, and it needs to create a certain wealth or social value. So once you come back and look at the innovation potential in the framework of application, we need to ask who is going to apply and what are the application opportunities that follow the creation of innovation, because the nurturing process is not just a creation of ideas. Very many times, all of us know that you have 100 ideas, one will work. And 100 workable ideas, actually one will work, and 100 working ideas, one will profit. So value creation and the social value or wealth creation doesn't flow from every idea that you create. So in terms of the innovation potential, we have to link to it the concept of application and the value creation and the resource base. Having said this, the affordability of innovation is an integral part of that element. Only then it'll reach a larger base. Now, in the context of innovation potential being nurtured, I like to flag to this panel what I call a PIE square, pi square. There are two components, the policies that are necessary and the people who have to be nurtured. It is the innovators need to be nurtured and policy needs to be nurturing. There are institutions, there are investments. Ideas without backing in the investment is not going to produce results. So they need to create an investment system. And you need, any first application comes with an element of risk. So the question of enterprise, that enterprise needs to have an ecosystem where the risk is not really averse. Very many times in many more social environments, we don't want to make an error. We don't want to fail. I think a tendency to reward a failure, recognize a failure, not punish a failure is a very integral part of innovation potential. So there are nurturing, you need to have a nurturing policy. You need to have the right kind of people, leaders, inspirators who have to really promote that innovation potential. The institutions must truly provide the space for risk profiling and reducing the risk reduction processes, and an investment which may be small, but it's important. And it turns out enterprise and ecosystem are an integral part of this, and how do we nurture them? And I know Subhashi talked about 15 minutes, that I'll be careful that I don't step out the time frame. And I would like to, at this point of time, to my students community, to tell you that when I was in the Department of Science and Technology, we came back with an idea called the power of innovations, power of ideas. The power of ideas was a three-party arrangement. We had IIM Ahmedabad, we had Economic Times and DST. And what we did was give a call and ask for ideas which are interesting and innovative. And each call for 3 weeks used to produce 16,000, 18,000 ideas. And we had people do the down reductions, and we brought back them 250 or so, then build a business plan for each one of them, mentored them in terms of converting that innovation into a value. And we, each one of those bright ideas backed up by an investor, we provided some kind of an award, 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs, which is seed funding for converting into a product. So the power of ideas each time produce hundreds of enterprises. Therefore, institutions like SRM, which want to nurture this, but consider this idea of doing it locally rather than nationally, and really created innovation as a culture in the social system. Thank you very much.
So you could take a little more time if you want. You have another.
You said 15 minutes, I finished in 15.
Not 15, it's a little more. But if you'd like to say something more, you could do that.
Okay. Well, you said so because I did. The reason why I didn't make PowerPoint was I was afraid that I may overstep my time. I just came out 15 minutes. Okay, I'll now perhaps may use this opportunity to perhaps talk about the students' community, how they responded to this idea of innovations. When I was in the government, I brought a program called Inspire, Innovation in Science Pursuit for Inspired Research. And what we did was to target this group very early. So we announced 1 million science awards for children in the age group of 10 to 15, covering every middle school and high school in the country. At that time, 4.75 schools were monitored. So we gave every school in the country 2 awards. It turns out to be $1 million award, gave 5,000 rupees. The children undertook this exercise to build a small project and participate in a district level exhibition. We sent mentors, to send peers to select, shortlist some of them to bring it to the state level. And from the state level, we picked 5% and brought to the national level. Over 1 million awards given during this first 5 years. It started in 2008. What happened was 3,800 children were brought to Delhi as a part of national performers. Believe me, 210 patents have come out of, patent applications have come out of those children from the 10 to 15 age group. That was an innovation potential targeted 1 million children across and 10, 15 age group. And it turned out that the first year, the person who got the second prize, for example, was from Haryana, 10th class student. The government put 10 crores and put up a company out of this in this process. Now, what we used to do every year, these children who are in the national awardees and the state awardees at about 50, 60 children, had a tea with the President of India in Rashtrapati Bhavan. That is what I call nurturing. It is create an excitement and build this process. Under the same scheme, what we did was we were the top 1% of the school performer in science and decided to do research. What we did was invite them for a science camp across the country. We had something like 5 lakh people participated in it. We had 70 Nobel Prize winners came into these meetings with the children because the brilliance breeds brilliance. So we had to get the exciting process. There were top 1% performer in any school board, decided to do a mathematics, physics, chemistry, life sciences for BSc, MSc score. We gave 80,000 rupees a year scholarship for 5 years and 20,000 rupees for doing research as a part of the undergraduate course, as a contingency. If you're a top rank in any branch of science, medicine, agriculture, veterinary, agriculture science, we said you're open to do a PhD, give a full scholarship for 5 years. Then if you're a person with a high quality science research, we gave them a salary and assistant professor of an IIT and 7 lakhs a year of assured research grant for 5 years. And it turned out the research fellowship scheme, 60% of the people who got the state first ranks in the university joined research happened to be women. And this scheme, we have so far delivered something like 22 lakh awards across the country. That is an investment into what I call innovation potential of students across the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really, the point you made about developing innovations locally is really very well taken. I'm sure the panel will take it further and develop ideas. Now I would invite Dr. Leena Wadia to come and speak.
Thank you, Shubhashri. I have a presentation, so I'm going to share my screen. I hope you guys can see it. Let me go into the,
Yeah,
is it visible? Is the slide visible?
perfectly.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to continue along the track set by Dr. Ramaswamy and talk mainly about the topic, which is nurturing the innovation potential of research for students. And I want to begin that by talking about something that Dr. Homi Bhabha, who is one of India's foremost scientists and institution builders, said on 19 December 1945 in Mumbai at the inauguration of TIFR, an institution that he built. Along with many others, he also set up the BARC, he set up the Department of Atomic Energy, he contributed to the setting up of the Department of Space and the Department of Electronics. I think his contribution to India has not been matched since then. So what he says is that the pursuit of science and its practical applications are no longer subsidiary social activities today. Science forms the basis of our whole social structure, without which life as we know it would be inconceivable. As Marx said, man's power of nature is at the root of history, and we have in our time seen the history of the world shaped by those countries which have made the greatest scientific progress. That was 1945, 75 years ago. So let's look at some product of research and innovation that has come out that we use, most of us use, who are lucky enough, use it with great pleasure for all kinds of things, including entertainment, but also education in these days of COVID and online. I'm sure many of the students out there are watching this webinar on the smartphone. So let's look at the history of the smartphone, because it captures the way science and innovation progress and produce value to society and wealth to countries, actually. So, it began with the discovery of the electron as far back as 1897. And then I have listed a whole list of discoveries that went into the smartphone, but this is by no means an exhaustive list. But let me just go through the ones I have listed. So quantum mechanics as the framework for thinking about atomic physics and everything that followed from it had such greats like Einstein and Bohr and Born and Heisenberg, Schrödinger, Dirac, Feynman, Planck, or two, I didn't see his name. Similarly, Einstein developed relativity. Now one might think that in 1905 and 1915, and one might think, what does it have to do with a smartphone? But we know that the accuracy of our GPS systems are because relativistic corrections are included. And then we had, in 1936, Alan Turing talk about the universal Turing machine. And, that was the start of the computing revolution. We had the development of the transistor in 1947, and, it was the foundation for the electronics revolution. We had Shannon and the information revolution. And of course, coming to smartphones, we have to talk about the first mobile phone call, which was in 1973 by a Motorola engineer in New York. And then India got, the GSM digital to 2G networks came in the 90s. And of course, smartphones themselves, BlackBerry, Symbian, and all of those gained traction in the early 2000s. And of course, this is all physics and mathematics and computer science and so on. I'm not talking about biology or the other sciences, because this is about what goes into a smartphone. But we cannot deny the contribution of design concepts and aesthetics. Let's not forget how Steve Jobs made, Macintoshes such a desirable instrument to have. And of course, much more contributed by hundreds of talented scientists and engineers around the world, actually. So that's how research and innovation progresses. And it pays. Dr. Ramaswamy said that, we have to nurture and research and innovation, and it pays to spend on research and innovation. Let's look at what the European Union has said, that they found that if they increase their investment in research to the extent of 0.2% of GDP, the GDP itself increases by 1.1%, which is a 5-fold return. And they attribute the 2/3 of the economic growth in Europe between 1995 to 2007 as the fruits of research and innovation. Let's move to the United States. And the American Physical Society recently in 2019 put up report in which they assessed that in 2016, industrial physics, just industrial physics, contributed 12.6% of US GDP, and which was approximately $2.3 trillion at that time. And it generated 11.5 million jobs, which was 6.6% of the total US employment. So these are amazing numbers. Now, in India, we have been slow about investment. Our research and investment is about 0.7% of GDP for several years, I think more than almost 2 decades with some variation. And it needs to be contrasted with the corresponding figures for China, which is 2.1%, 2.8% for US, and much larger, 4.3% for Israel and 4.2% for South Korea. So most countries are spending much more than us in terms of their GDP. And if you look at China and US, which are much larger GDPs than ours, it is a lot of money. And that shows, because you see, if you look at the World Intellectual Property Organization website in 2019, they said that China has filed a record 1.54 million patents in 2018, of which just 10% of the patents were filed by non-resident Chinese. The US filed nearly 600,000, 597,000, and India just over 50,000. So we are just beginning, and we need to sort of speed up very quickly, I think, because even of these 50,000 patents, 70% of them were filed by non-resident Indians, you know. We also have much fewer scientists than most countries. China has 5 times more scientists per million population than us. We have about some 200 plus, and China has 1,100 plus, and Israel has something like 8,000 plus per million. So these are, you know, important things to keep in mind. So, and these were also important things that we kept in mind during the national education policy formulation, of which I was fortunate enough to first support the Dr. Kasturirangan committee with research, but I also got to be on the drafting committee. So I am very familiar with the contents of the education policy. So what I've done is pick up a few things to share with you on what the policy thinks is necessary to help young people do more research and innovation and carry on from where Dr. Ramaswamy talked about, where DST has been sort of doing a very good job trying to encourage young people to contribute to research and innovation. So, you know, the first thing is that, you know, we need to create space in the curriculum for students to have time to do projects, to spend time in labs, you know, whether it is science labs or whether it is IT labs or whether it is going out into the community to gather data for social science projects. We need space for that. And fortunately, the effort on creating a new curricular framework, which will do exactly that, has already started, even though the government's version of the national education policy is yet to come. You know, they have already started work on the new national curricular framework. For college students, we have said that there needs to be more space in the undergraduate degree. So we have suggested introducing the 4-year undergraduate degree, which will give space for students to also do research, undergraduate research, and get an honors version of the degree, which will give them direct admission into PhD. And to do all this, we have also emphasized heavily on autonomy to colleges, which is a concept that has been talked about for more than 2 decades, but hasn't been implemented yet. But colleges need the autonomy to actually innovate and come up with different kinds of degrees, courses that they can offer their students. So of course, faculty are a very critical part of research and innovation. And I will come back to discussing faculty because I have a separate slide on them, and the policy says a lot about supporting faculty to support students. And of course, then there's the question of labs, libraries, internet access. Internet access was never a luxury, but the pandemic has shown us that what the lack of internet access is doing is denying education to millions of kids in our country, because they just cannot access anything, and they had many of them left home, their place of study. College students left universities in a hurry. They didn't carry books with them, and nobody has any material to study. So their education is in serious threat. So of course, many people say that, we don't have the money, we have 15.5 lakh schools, how are we going to provide resources for so many schools? So the policy brought back an idea from the Kothari Commission, which is the creation of school clusters centered around secondary schools. And then if you look up the numbers, we have about 280,000 secondary school and 130,000 higher secondary schools, which are much more tractable numbers, you see. So the idea of a school cluster is that, all this resources, laboratories, libraries, all of this will be set up at a secondary school, and all the schools around the secondary school, classes from pre-primary all the way till grade 12 will be able to access the resources available at a particular secondary school. So that's the idea of a school cluster. So even primary schools nearby will be able to go over sometimes and access many things. And it's not just labs, libraries, it's also sports facilities, it's also sports teachers and music teachers. It's too expensive to appoint music teachers for 15 lakh schools, but it may be possible to appoint music teachers to 130,000 high schools, higher secondary schools. So that's the idea. And of course, there is enormous emphasis on broad-based liberal education. Dr. Ramaswamy pointed out that you have to go out and innovate, you have to go out and look at your local surrounding and learn about it and see how you can contribute to it. And so a liberal education will help you do that. The policy is trying to say that, let's remove the distinction between curricular and extracurricular and co-curricular. And so arts, sports, vocational education courses will all become part of buckets of courses that are available to students starting from secondary school and also going into undergraduate college. And the exams will become much, much less stressful. And, if a child is feeling sick or under the weather on that particular day, her whole life cannot be made to depend on that. So the exams will also be offered multiple times and will test concepts and higher level skills, so that the idea is to lift the stress of endless studying that our children are doing and give them some opportunity to relax and imagine and, push their curiosity to wherever it takes them. So one of the ways that, there are many ways of doing, introducing the learning by doing concept, of course, but, given that our schools have not been offering a lot of vocational education, one way of introducing vocational learning by doing a lot is to integrate vocational education into mainstream school and higher education. And as my last bullet shows that, it's important, developed countries have 70% of their youth who are trained in vocational education. And, you need your X-ray technicians and your pathologists and your, dialysis equipment operators. And if you're in music, then you need your sound engineers and all of that. So all of those are professions and they are vocational education. And why not introduce them in schools? It's the best way to do that. We've tried it in the past, but we haven't succeeded. So the policy makes some recommendations on how to get over the previous, all the stresses that come, all the difficulties that we have met in the past, actually. So introducing vocational education, starting from middle school and allowing every child to learn at least one vocation at a reasonable level of proficiency will also, teach students the value of different kinds of intelligences and different kinds of talent. Everybody is not academically inclined. Many people are sports inclined. Many people are musically inclined. So all of those people should find their professions as they are part of school. So one of the things that the policy wants to do is to say that free and compulsory education will be offered to children up till the age of 18. And many children, if you have got a good education, you can just go out and work and you don't need to carry on studying. And therefore, it's very, very important that in secondary school already, you find out what it is that you would like to do. And for doing that, you need exposure to many, what are all the professions out there and how you can contribute towards them. And similarly, it will also help us to look after, so much of our hereditary skills that we have in textiles, in sculpture, in, art and painting and all of that, if we introduce it in schools, actually. So that's really all I wanted to say about vocational education. And moving on to beyond undergraduate education to master's education and research, I already told you about the fact that undergraduate education will be flexible. It can be either 3 years or 4 years. And so correspondingly, the master's degrees can also be either 1 year or 2 years. And of course, the integrated masters will continue. Like I said before, if you have done undergraduate research, then you are eligible to go in directly to PhD programs. So one of the worrying things is that at the moment, we only have some 10.8% enrollment in master's programs and less than 0.5% enrollment in PhD programs. This is not enough because we don't have enough people to create enough new knowledge and also to become faculty members in all our institutions. So, for example, in the United States, I know for sure in the engineering discipline, because I wrote a report on College of Engineering, Pune, the enrollment in masters is above 50%, and we can't have 10% enrollment in masters. And usually master's degree is the first place where you start doing some research. And in India, unfortunately, many master's programs also don't have research component, which then means that faculty actually have no research experience. So then they will have difficulty guiding students when it comes to their projects. So the education policy seeks to, sort of change this situation and to support the growth of a broad-based research culture in colleges and universities through setting up of the National Research Foundation. This is an idea that actually has got a lot of thing. I have a slide next, but I'll come back for a minute to what I had said about having a slide on faculty members. We have been not treating our faculty members very well at all. And that's really, worrying and unfair. I mean, last week there was an article in the Times about teachers in Karnataka, and the numbers are shocking. Let me share them with you. 69% of college teachers work on contract. They are paid 10 months a year, and they are paid 11,000 rupees a month if they have a master's degree. And if you have a PhD degree, you are paid 13,000 rupees a month. So let's get this number, think about this number for a minute again. 1.3 lakh annual income for someone who has a PhD, and this is, 69% of college teachers and 50% of university teachers in Karnataka. I think we cannot become, when it comes to science and technology, we are competing internationally. Let's be very clear about that. If we don't find new knowledge and file a patent for it, someone else will. And so, we can't compete if we do this kind of thing. And so, like I said, the number of PhDs among faculty is pretty low. The NIRF itself says that only 33% of engineering faculty have PhD degrees. And so we must work on assisting faculty members to complete their PhDs. And I don't know, how am I doing for time, Shubhashri?
Yeah, you're just about, maybe you could wind up in a minute or so.
Okay, so yeah, so faculty, and then one other very important thing that we do about faculty in government institutions is that we actually transfer them periodically. And this is crazy because when I did a report on College of Engineering, Pune, I actually talked to the teachers and they said that, look, if we are faculty in an engineering college and we know that we will get transferred in 1.5 years, 2 years, whatever is the number that the government thinks, we are not going to set up labs because by the time we design the lab and the equipment comes, we are transferred. So you cannot have college faculty building relationships with their institution and their students if we insist on transferring them. So if we don't sort of look at issues of faculty, we will not be able to go ahead very much. And the NEP has talked a lot about that. Now I have 2 other slides which I don't want to go into. The National Research Foundation is designed to build capacity among faculty and teachers in colleges and universities. And for this, the main new feature about the NRF is the fact that the institutions will receive support and mentorship from experienced scientists and researchers, irrespective of whether they are serving or retired. And the last thing I wanted to say was that, there has to be, the NRF is also charged with bringing in industry participation. So, industry can help in many ways, and the policy delineates many ways in which industry can help. And so some of them are listed here: apprenticeships and internships to students in large numbers, sabbatical opportunities for faculty members, or even PhD opportunities for faculty members, and collaborative research projects. So that's really all I wanted to say. These are just some of the aspects of the education policy that can help nurture research and innovation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Wadia.
I just wanted to say one last thing, that this talk has been focused largely on science, but the policy actually does not distinguish between science and social science. And like I said, in the smartphone, without design and aesthetics, we wouldn't have as nice smartphones as we use now. So it's not about only science, research, and innovation. It's also about the social sciences. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wadia. That was a very interesting lecture with many points for debate, I guess. Hello? Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
The window has just vanished. How do I get it back? Can someone help me?
You wanted the slides? I removed the slides.
No, the whole window has vanished, actually.
Oh, that I don't know.
The technical team, Milango? Hello?
We can hear you, Shubhashri.
Okay. Because I can't see anything on the screen. There's just this blank screen. I mean, it's just gone. Anyway, I would like to invite all the panel for a discussion now. So we'll just manage without the, meantime, while the team fixes up the glitch, maybe we could just go for a discussion. Would anyone in the panel like to say something?
Can I say something?
Yes, please. Dr. Ramanujam, please.
Yeah. First, I want to thank Dr. Ramaswamy and Dr. Wadia for very inspiring remarks and comments. I was wondering, listening to Dr. Ramaswamy talk about how our innovations seem to thrive so much in the informal sector. And this is something that we see as an experience as well. Right? Many people who are very good with their hands and creating things, somehow when it comes to the formal education system, this whole thing seems to not work at all. Now, what is the problem there? I mean, I think this is related to what Dr. Wadia was speaking about as well. I mean, see, she was talking about vocational education and mainstreaming vocational education in some way. One major problem is social perception, right? Mm-hmm. In the country, polytechnics have had a very bad press, and we've had, Tamil Nadu has any number of polytechnics, which, the way they are run, I wouldn't want to talk about them. But if the public goes for engineering degrees, there is a certain rationale in the way people go. And so somehow the formal education system has to give a lot more importance to hands-on work, innovation of a kind which I don't have to tell Dr. Ramaswamy. After all, our science education is so much theory laden, and in terms of doing experiments, most children just get to see experiments at all, if at all. They're lucky. Very, very few actually happen to work with them. So I don't want to go on with this. What I wanted to remark was that in Sweden, I saw, where it's entirely a public education system, every high school science lab is also integrated to a foundry or a workshop. So children actually get experience with high school children actually, work with metal, work with wood, and, the lab, they actually produce things. Can we think of models of that kind? I mean, where cluster labs are integrated to workshops and, foundries or what have you. I don't know enough. I'm a theoretician, but I'm really puzzled as to why this gap is so enormous in our country.
May I answer this question?
Yes, please.
With Ramanujam, I would like to go slightly away from the government and methods of systems. I used to define Indian civilization itself, society itself, the minds-on society. When we are discussing the Western world, it is hands-on. There's a cultural disconnect in this process, which is being bridged. I would not say that we are in the same yardsticks. Most of us have valued as a society what we do with the mind to be more valuable than what we do with the hand. And this is a serious problem. Agriculture is undervalued in the country compared to what you do in some Vedic chanting. Therefore, we have to accept that as a milieu on which we have to create the innovation potential. Creation of idea is not a problem of a minds-on society. How do you convert that idea into a workable result? And that's a huge chain. The idea has to be nurtured, has to be incubated. Therefore, the idea of incubation centers is that we are talking about today necessary. Secondly, whenever we talk about the science, as scientists, we want to convert every learner in the school to be a scientist. Please remember that we don't have absorption capacity if large number of people turn out to be scientists. It's a reality. When I went to Delhi, the total number of full-time equivalent scientists of India is 1.34 lakhs. Now it's a 2.2 lakhs. And still, the reason why we are not able to invest 2% is not because of putting less money per scientist, we don't have enough scientists. Therefore, this is a very good opportunity for attracting young people to become researchers. And we need people more than even money at this moment. And that education process also, we are understanding phenomena. Understand how nature operates, how celestial bodies operate, astronomy is great, fine. But fundamentally, solving problem is an important part of innovation. And that requires not just disciplinary orientation of this branch of science or that branch of science, but the culmination of several disciplines. So the educational systems itself have to build it, not factorize into vocation or academic, but problem solving as a method of learning. In fact, it's interesting that you say this. When I was in first standard, Dr. Rajagopalachari brought a system of shift in education system. Morning you learn mathematics, afternoon you do vocation. Of course, yet it was rejected. Therefore, the question that we're discussing today is larger than comparisons. I would leave it at that stage.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramaswamy. Would anyone else like to say, comment on what points have been raised so far?
If I can just add,
Yes,
Subhadri?
please. Yes, please.
Yeah. So, Dr. Ramanujam, you are right. It's exactly what you said, that there has been a perception about vocational education as something that is something lower in prestige. It's lower for people who are not good in academics and so on. And that has also been partly, it has grown partly also because, for example, in the earliest vocational education efforts were in the 1950s through the ITIs. But the people who passed out of ITIs, they did not have any method of getting into college and going, doing their masters or doing PhDs or teaching themselves, because no pathways were delineated for them. They would not get admission into regular undergraduate degrees and so on. Even the ones who finished the equivalent of 12th standard, although a lot of ITIs are about, for dropouts. Similarly, with polytechnics, there is a sideways move into engineering, which is an option. But other than that, these pathways of coming back into doing masters, PhD, and so on had not been worked out. We are hoping that with this education policy implementation, first by integrating it into every school and making every child do something, some vocation, whichever ones the school is in a position to offer. And like you said, you can go out to the nearby foundries or the brick building thing, or if there is an ITI in the neighborhood, or if there is a PM Kaushal Kendra in the neighborhood, go and learn from there. And it will teach respect for profession. It will teach children that there are other skills too. There are some people who are very good with their hands, or with electronics, or with repairing computers, or all of that stuff, or even doing art actually. So that's the aim of the policy, to try to get over this social status hierarchy by including it in school in a broad-based kind of way.
Thank you. Would anyone like to comment on that? Dr. K. Ramasamy, you have not said anything yet. Okay. I think, yeah, if anyone else wants to say something, you can. Otherwise, I can move on to some questions from the audience. So there are lots of questions on courses and all that. But maybe we could save that for the end. So one question is on cosmology. I want to do my career in cosmology. Which field should I choose, and what should I be capable? What should be my capability for it? Would anyone like to answer that?
I think you should answer it, Shubha.
No, I am not a scientist. I'm a journalist now, though I did have an origin as a scientist. But maybe, what about SRM University? Does it offer courses in basic sciences? And
Can I intervene?
yes, please.
We have a separate science and humanities faculty, wherein dance, arts, and cosmologies are offered. If they want, they can always approach the science and humanities. Otherwise, cosmetics is one of the major branch super specialty in the medical college. They can be first MBBS doctor, then they can select cosmetology.
Okay.
I think for,
yeah.
I think we should advise that student to pursue mathematics and physics for studying cosmology.
Yes, that is true.
That has to be very strong.
In fact, there is a lot of interesting places to do cosmology at a higher level, but the basic foundation is in physics and in theoretical physics, experimental physics.
And mathematics.
And mathematics, of course, grounded in all that. There's a lot of work happening in solar physics in India. So for the future, that's always there, but the grounding is basically in physics. There's another question about humanities. Humanities, will campus companies come for humanities students, and how many seats are there? This maybe generally, can anyone answer this about what is the scope of humanities to land jobs and things like that?
Very, very crucial.
Difficult question, right?
Would you like me to go take a small shot at it? Not a lot.
Yes, please.
Just one or two things. So the thing is that, we are primarily a service sector economy. And that means, whether it is travel or tourism or IT or retail or, so many of the service sector people are looking for humanities graduates. So the most important thing is for these people to have good communication skills, some ability to work in teams, critical thinking skills, so that they can be in charge of services for other people. So I think humanities and social sciences, BA, BCom people have a lot of opportunities in the services sector of the economy.
That's really encouraging. And my own personal experience is that you do what you like very much and then break open a path that waits for you. Something will work out. So maybe if there are no more questions right now, we will just go on to the next set of panel talks. Now, Dr. Ramanujam will speak on what he has to tell you now. So I just hand over the screen to Dr. Ramanujam.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so I want to, I've given the title as research as a way of learning. And, I want to make it clear that what I'm talking about is a theoretician's perspective. And, Yeah, so let me
Oh, sir, you
start.
please put the slide on presentation mode.
The problem is that if I put it on
Okay, go ahead.
full screen, then I don't see anything else. I mean, I just see the screen and even the, okay, I can try.
No, it's fine if you're comfortable with this. Just
Yeah,
go on.
I'm okay with it. But yeah. The panel also disappears. That is the usual problem.
Yeah, that's a bit of a problem.
Okay, let me try. Yeah. Okay. So let me again begin by thanking the Hindu team and Shubhashri Desikan for giving me this opportunity. It's a great pleasure to be with the two Dr. Ramasamis and Dr. Vadia. And participate in this wonderful, inspiring discussion, really. So I was once speaking to some children at a math club. These were high school kids. And they were used to doing science projects. And then when I was talking about projects, they were saying like, math, how can you do projects in math? Right? These were like class 7, class 8. And I was trying to convince them that math projects could be fun, and gave a lot of examples from everyday life. And then at the end of the session, one child called Naveen, he came to me and he said, "Sir, I like math very much. I want to do a math project." And I said, "Okay, what do you like?" And he says, "I like spiders very much. Can you tell me a project that I can do with math and spiders?" Now, this is a classic case of putting your foot in your mouth. I mean, I had been saying math in everyday life and everything. And then this kid says, I like spiders, let me do something. Now, I was really put on the spot and I tried to think of something. And then I said, okay, do you know how a spider's web looks? And of course he knows. He knows much more about spiders than I would ever do. And so you can envision the spider's web as a sequence of concentric hexagons with radial lines connecting the vertices. And so I said, you can explore this. And thankfully, I went off. He was talking to his teachers. And then a month later, when we had this Math Expo, I visited and I saw his project. And I found that he had come up with formulas for perimeter and area, which are the only two concepts that he knew of. He came up and then he asked a very interesting question. If the spider is at one point and there is a bug, an insect at another point, what is the procedure? How does the spider find the shortest route by which it can go and catch the insect? Now, note that he had no idea of Cartesian coordinates, no coordinate systems at all. And only a child can ask a question like that. And he actually tried to come up with a procedure for doing this. And he filled up notebooks with figures showing what happens. I mean, where do you see spider's web? In corners of buildings, and they are pulled. And then he had these pulled web figures, and he was frustrated because he couldn't find formulas for the areas of these shapes. He didn't know trigonometry until that point, and sine theta wouldn't make any sense to him, right? But the point is, this was a mathematician. In fact, I was so happy with his work. I invited him to Institute of Mathematical Sciences. He gave a little seminar. My mathematicians colleagues attended. And this is something to celebrate. I mean, he was a researcher in class 8. And in terms of innovation, for me, in theoretical research, it is about bringing all the intellectual resources at your disposal and attacking a problem that you see that's new. And Naveen was, in every sense, a mathematician. Now, I have since then witnessed a great deal of mathematical effort in children of kind, and this is in embodying the spirit of the discipline, spirit of doing mathematics. Now, what is doing mathematics really? It often means things like selecting between representations, devising representations, looking for what doesn't change, invariance when you transform something, observing extreme cases, typical ones, coming up with conjectures. Now, looking actively for counterexamples. Now, when you do mathematics, you don't look for proofs, you look for counterexamples. And when your problem becomes very difficult, you actually generalize to make them easier. This is very unique to mathematical thinking. And then you build on answers to generate new questions for exploration, and so on. Now, these are processes. I think Dr. Ramsamy referred to processes, and I think this is very important. This is not about pieces of knowledge, and these are really mostly missing in our classrooms. And here I mean not only school, but also undergraduate, especially. Schools and colleges, we don't have room for processes. On doing science, what is doing science really about? Again, well, data and observation are most important, and that takes enormous amount of patience, right, in collecting, and a kind of integrity that is involved in maintaining data and repeating experiments under varied conditions, seeing what changes and what does not. I mean, this is something that we have a real problem with, because I learned in my undergraduate days that before you go to the lab, first thing you should know is what kind of graph you're going to get, and spend the 3 hours desperately producing that graph, right? And at some point you become smart enough and you realize that actually the shape of the curve matters more, and that's all that really matters. And so everything becomes a way of generating that. It's not about actually seeing something new, that, looking for something that you didn't have any idea about, variations about this. And very important things like estimation, approximation, understanding error bars. One of my colleagues says that a person who doesn't use the term error bar is probably not a scientist, right? I mean, in some sense, it's something so fundamental in one's thinking. But somehow in our school or undergraduate education, these things don't matter. And very important things like making tools and instruments, the emphasis, tremendous emphasis on instruments. And another very, a lesson in humility in science, which is continued search for alternative and better explanations. That you don't stop with any explanation, you just keep looking for better explanations. Now, again, these are processes that are missing in our classrooms, school, and college. So now there are, Dr. Ramsamy and Dr. Wadia have spoken at policy level. There's a lot. I'm talking about it at a micro level from a classroom. In some sense, what I'm trying to say is that pedagogy is at the heart of whatever we want to talk about in research. If we want to, and to also point out that research doesn't start. I mean, there are a lot of questions which were asking about integrated PhD, and I completely agree. But research doesn't start after postgraduate degree or after any degree. I mean, I wanted to mention Naveen because research can start at the age of 13. There's nothing stops you from, research is really about going, problem solving, about going after things that you don't know, use whatever resources that you've got at your disposal. And that attitude to research, a predisposition for these kind of processes is what I think, nurturing a sense of research is about. I would like to, I call it a slogan because I would say that if you want to promote research and innovation, we need to encourage exploration in schools and colleges. So the notion of exploration and investigation is not something that we wait for, but the spirit of that, I think, is. And I also want to add a warning here, which is that if we look at education as peddling information, that's best left to Google. In fact, Google can do a far better job than providing information. So information laid in education has to give way for exploration. Now, I want to talk mainly about, since this was also advertised as counseling and talking about undergraduate students, I want to talk about, can theoretical research be a career at all? I want to say yes, in terms of livelihood, yes. Though the days when theoretical researchers were starving, I mean, to some extent are gone. I mean, it is possible to actually make a living. In terms of being part of a national community, international community, I think this is extremely important. Research actually liberates you in many ways, that you're thinking in a global sense. And I think that's very important. In terms of time and freedom, I think, that you can spend your life working on problems that you enjoy and somebody pays you for it, right? I mean, that's wonderful, right? I think research has that thing. And you don't have a boss who's breathing down your neck and you When you're doing research, you can set agendas, long-term programs, and go after them. The kind of tremendous sense of freedom that is there in research, which I want to tell young people, is that it's not about pushing for fame. Choosing something where your career is 40 years, it's going to be for 35, 40 years. You want to wake up and feel happy about going to work, right? And that's something I'm very sure, I think my colleagues, all researchers would, and I'm saying in scientific and mathematical sense, but I'm sure that's true for all research. And I also want to say it's actually feasible. Being brilliant is good, but not necessary. You don't have to be brilliant. You just have to be hardworking. And so it's a completely wrong thing to think that you need to be brilliant to do mathematical research. I have got by very well, but without having much brilliance. So in the context of, I want to say specifically, especially since questions also seem to come in these things, the umbrella of mathematical sciences is very broad, accommodates many kinds of creatures under it, theoretical computer science, which I call the business of converting existence theorems to algorithmic constructions. With exciting open problems. There are, probably some of the great challenges of the century that young people can start working on. And that's...
Dr. Ramanujam, could you just be a bit louder, please?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it better now?
A little better, yeah.
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 And also that these combinations are extremely important, right? I mean, that computational sciences, I think, is especially in physics, mathematical biology. I mean, these are things that in the new century, people have to take much more seriously than we did in the 20th century. And when I studied in school, it was a choice you made whether you go into mathematics or biology. And I think in the new century, such choices are really wrong. I think we need insights from both kinds of ways of thinking to do research in the new ways. And chemists, the way they talk about molecular design, I mean, this is not just phenomenology. This is something that you can actually design molecules, right? So there are, and then algorithms and drug discovery. So I also want to point out that one of the very important lines of thinking that's involved is not to compartmentalize these. The compartmentalization is there for certain administrative conveniences, but a research orientation really means a willingness to think about all these and get intuition across. And again, I'm taking only sciences because of my limited understanding, but I'm sure that we want a broader combination. And for instance, computing with calculus, with number theory, with geometry. So what I'm pointing out is that these combinations of skills are actually far more important than individual disciplines, because it gives you the kind of opportunities for thinking about, for thinking of new ways, even for technology development, I'm sure. Okay, so I don't want to go on with this list. Just to point out that different areas of, it's not just mathematics as a discipline or computing as a discipline or physics as a discipline, but actually cross thinking from across areas is something that characterizes research more and more today. The data, right? There is this combination of computing and statistical techniques is opening up opportunities like never before, right? And so,
yeah, sorry to interrupt you once more. Your slides are not moving actually.
They're not moving now?
They're not moving.
Try to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it okay now?
This is better. Yeah.
Is it moving?
It's moving now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm almost done anyway. So
sorry
one of the things that we usually say is that learning mathematics prepares you only to teach mathematics. And I mean, to some extent, this is the predominant thinking of the 20th century. But I want to point out that math teaching as a career in itself is something very important to think about. That probably one of the greatest challenges is, somebody even asked a question, is to change the way we do mathematics thinking, mathematics teaching. I think mathematics education requires fundamental innovation in itself. And that's something that, is a great career option, and probably huge and increasing demand. If you want to talk about all over the world, it's the demand for mathematics education. And then there are new resources that are there, new technologies which have opened new opportunities. For teaching calculus, I think it's really wrong to teach calculus the way I learned calculus many years ago, because the kind of tools that are available today are fantastic, and we use very, very little of them. And on understanding limits or any of these things, right? If nothing else, if you learn mathematics, you can do some +2 coaching and make money. So, right. So I would say it's not so bad at all. So, I mean, I'm saying it in a light vein, but what I want to point out is that education as a career is something to be thought about very seriously for young people, but not to simply say that, with a degree, but in terms of the innovation that is possible. Research in education is as important as research in science and technology or other areas. So I want to end with a quote. This is a quote which I like very much, and it says, "The advancement and perfection of mathematics are intimately connected with the prosperity of the state." I don't know how many people can guess who said this. Well, we don't have much time, so let me tell you who it was. This was Napoleon. Dr. Wadia gave a quote from what Homi Bhabha said at the inauguration of TIFR. This was Napoleon inaugurating the École Normale Supérieure in Paris. And that was intended as a school for teachers, in fact, of mathematics. And Napoleon actually said that, the spirit of modernity of the state is reflected by really its attitude to mathematics. So of course I'm selling mathematics here, but my point is I'm just using it as a template to talk about what we might need to do to think in terms of research. So I'll just end with saying that the idea of research, the idea of experimentation, that idea of talking about problem solving can be at any time, right? And that's one thing. And the second is it's about a predisposition. It is about an attitude. And systemically, I think we need fundamental change in pedagogy to achieve this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramanujam. That was a very interesting talk, very nicely presented also. Particularly, I loved your idea of looking for a better explanation rather than the ultimate good explanation. Thanks so much. Before we go on to the next speaker, there's one clarification I would like to make. There's a question from the audience to Dr. Leena Wadia, madam. You claimed that there are autonomous colleges that offer honors degree for 4 years after research, but unfortunately most of the autonomous colleges are offering honors programs only 3 years. She was actually talking about proposition to, I think it was a proposition to start colleges that offer 44-year degrees, right?
Yeah, so I replied to that person. I saw it on the Q&A. So what I wanted to say was that at the moment, 4-year undergraduate degree is not allowed. But we are hoping that with the implementation of the national education policy, the 4-year degree will be allowed, actually. Okay. As per present UGC rules, the 4-year undergraduate degree is not allowed. So it's not the fault of colleges. They cannot run it.
Yes. Thank you so much for clarifying that point. Okay, let us move on to the last speaker of the panel with this program, Dr. K. Ramaswamy of SRM. Please present your talk now, sir.
At the outset, I thank the Hindu organization, SRM, and the panelists, those who have associated with us in presenting this important webinar. At the outset, Dr. T. Ramaswamy started with his own poetical science. He is always an early bird. He is a very good thinker, and he has indicated what are all the requirements first for innovation and creativity. And followed by him, what is the future offering that also known. Our mathematician indicated that it is always known knowledge is delivered, and it is our duty to create new knowledge and add on to that one. That is also very clear. May I get the permission to upload my slides, please?
Yes, please.
See, everyone has a history. India has its own history, but by the time all our earlier systems were known, it was not called as India. It is always kingdoms. For Tamil Nadu, we had the Kanji University. Takshila is now in Pakistan. Nalanda, it is recreated. But what was the talent that was generated? And who were the faculty in that one? Practically, the faculties were always moving. In fact, Nalanda was established by the movement of faculty from Gujarat and Kanjipuram. Likewise, they also had the possibility to create new knowledge. Today, mathematics, our professor indicated the nons associated with the science. Ujjain was considered to be the pinnacle of mathematics. And what were the known basic ancient success in building the incredible irrigation canals, rainwater harvesting structures, places, forts, roads, dams, and aqueducts, barely knowledge by the professionals. And if you think of the science, what was taught, it was mostly interdisciplinary approach. Even Sushruta, the inventor of the medical science and the surgery, he wanted to add with Ayurveda and other sister disciplines so that a physician is complete. It is not with more focused, sub-discipline oriented, sectorial studies that was known. But today, it is better that we should realize that what was the scientific principle that was available to build Pragadiswara temple, which was not even on concrete belt or a footing, it was only on the sand bed. And what was the principle by which we lifted that larger single stone to the top of the temple, which is all known history. But are we following the same principles for the construction of today? As our second speaker and the third speaker indicated, we teach everything in the classrooms. But when they move to the higher classes, the innovative capacity and creativity is always dwindling. At the end of the day, they focus on a small thing and can submit a thesis and come out with a degree. And you just imagine how the major Anakat was built along the running river Kaveri. A old man gave the concept and it was built with the ingenuity of engineers. And research is always described as a process that moves through a number of key stages. And it is always to create a non-obvious, a non-duplicated, but replicable or reproducible, original, well-evidenced new knowledge. This new knowledge can be totally new or it can add on value for a existing knowledge. And for which, what is the different problems today for the youngsters? People talk about climate change leading to drought, floods, due temperature spikes. And we also have inadequate doctors, whether it is human beings, animals, or plants. This is mostly reduced skill available, reduced manpower available, reduced diagnostic kits. You might have seen how many discussions, how many modifications in the testing processes, what was suggested for COVID-19 itself. And more, we have the soil pollution, soil related problems, and water problems, water pollution. Today, whenever we travel, we always take a protected water bottle with us. I'm sure in next few years, we have to carry oxygen bottles also with us to respire peacefully. And there is the third problem is unpredictable selling price of the produce generated from our soil and water. And we don't have a well-connected data for analysis. It is wherever there is a small unit, they collect the data and it is always kept in lock and key. It is not available for the system. So the younger generation has to innovate, create, and then come to a consensus to translate these know-hows for the societal benefit. Gone are the days knowledge and skill were the root causes for getting the employment. But today, besides the knowledge, skill, you need creativity, innovation, and empowered entrepreneurship so that all these things can lead to a societal development. This is the reason why our UGC has come out with the soft skills that are needed. But one thing what as educationists we have to realize is that these soft skills are now with grade points. Where from you are bringing the grade points? You are taking the main concepts and main related core subjects, removing part of it, and then you are adding the soft skill into this. In the olden days, like Dr. T. Ramasamy or Ramanujam or myself or Dr. Wadia, we were adding the soft skill only from the private expertise what we used. Today, you wanted to involve all these things in the curriculum. Once you do this one, our core subjects lack all the difficulties. And you please assess what is the quality and innovation. The quality of research and the innovation has to be coincidental, and you can always be a very good innovative person. But it should be supported with reproducible and verifiable research output, then only it will be acceptable. And today, all our faculties are not motivated and committed, as our Madam Wadia indicated. And it is high time that we have to encourage, nurture the faculty first, then only they will nurture our student friends. And what is that is the way forward? All our students, through their innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, bring the knowledge to the rural mass, where he can apply those knowledges and to produce the product. And the process of producing that product, the technology should be also made available in the rural area. I'm sure that all of us can accept today food and all the vegetables and fruits can be provided by the agriculture in the COVID-19 period because of the science they developed, because of the involvement of the rural population, and it is because of the hard work of those population that we are feeding today. So it is high time that we have to take the science in terms of creativity, innovation, and the entrepreneurship to the rural area so that this country, India as an agrarian country, can always share 50% of the GDP from the rural mass and rural productivity. What is the ecosystem that is prevalent today? Most of our youth today dream for a good job. They need a good salary. They wanted to have their own house and their own a small farmhouse and a farm. They need an individual car, phone with the internet connectivity. And once in a while, they wanted to also go for a world tour. Practically, these are not required by the corporate. What they require is the 3 C's. They need a good character from the employer, and they need good competence in the technical, professional, and soft skill, and a commitment that they will continue in the job and they will deliver. What is the skill set that is required for getting all these 3? The skill set that is required is technical, professional, and the soft skills. And these are provided by the educational institutions, but most of the institutions are unicentric. Say, for example, engineering or medical or arts and science. There are very few universities having the multidisciplinary approaches so that they can get the technical support, professional system. At the same time, they can have the soft skill training in the same institute. So at the end of the day, the new produce from the university will be knowledgeable, skilled, with a creative mind, innovative potential, which can lead to societal transformation. Only for the past 4 years, the UGC and MHRD talks about societal development. And the companies are moving from getting good employees to making them good. So company can also invest in the individuals so that we can get. I would like to, everyone has given a quote, but I want to bring a statement. Macaulay, after coming to India for introducing mathematics and English for our education system, he says, I have traveled length and breadth of India, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar or who is a thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber he has seen. At the end, he says, I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and her cultural heritage. And therefore, I propose what he proposed, what we have seen is known. What, based on this only, Mahatma Gandhi wanted to have a rural prosperity with knowledge, know-how, creativity, and societal development. We missed this one, and it is high time that we have to reinvent ourselves, and our younger population has to go ahead and then contribute for the development. And there are institutions like SRM, which has 6 faculties within the same campus of 200 acres. You have engineering, medical, law, management, agriculture, and related field. What is the advantage of this one? You can always select one profession as per your parental wish and your wish, but you can add some of your additional requirement based on your individual skill and requirement from the sister disciplines. This is the advantage. What is that SRM is going to provide for the researchers for nurturing? We have a separate research institute wherein you can take focused research. We have research track faculty, research institute faculty, faculty research, and student research facilities. And we are supporting the faculty by providing the initial research grant. And we are also giving the students for the grant and contingencies. These are some of the new initiatives which are available in SRM. If you want to be good in research, you can always select a fundamental research or application-oriented research or a product-oriented research, for which we have the entrepreneur cell, we have the design cell, and we have also the fabrication cell. So it is all the basic facilities are provided by the SRM. Please open up, identify, visit us, observe, and take a decision. Wish you all good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ramaswamy. That was a very interesting talk, and especially I liked your phrasing of empowered entrepreneurship. I would like to connect back to Dr. T. Ramaswamy, who also mentioned that rather than doing local, development, there are locally pockets of developed places where ecosystems are developed for entrepreneurship, but it's not so. For instance, Bangalore is a very good environment, but Chennai, I don't know whether it might be as good an environment. How do we bridge these gaps in empowering entrepreneurship? Can one of the panelists talk to me about this?
You want from Pro T. Ramaswamy or?
I'll answer this.
Sure.
You see, governments develop schemes. We develop policies, we develop some schemes, and provide a support system. But in general, I'll give a governance principle. When the sensibilities are local, command cannot be central. Fundamentally, innovation is a very dynamic system. It's not something that you decide from Delhi and then implement it in a village somewhere else. And that sensibility cannot be connected so easily. So entrepreneurship is a system. We can provide fund, resources, and facilities and so on. But nurturing process has to be grounded in space. Now, as somebody who had dealt with the informal innovation space in this country, I must say that our innovation potential is far higher than the rest of the world in terms of informal innovation system. But in formal systems, we have a serious problem. The problem is not just money and people and so on. If you really, in fact, Dr. Wadia was talking about investment being 0.7%, 1% of the GDP. But if you go back and ask 2015 data of the World Bank on terms of actual investment, purchase power parity, $66.5 billion, which is the sixth largest investor in the world. And per scientist, full-time equivalent, it is equivalent to the United States, $332,000 per person. Therefore, what we need is to have a large body of scientists and researchers who are professionally linked to create a value for research. Not for government supporting research for what I want to do is not enough. Researchers must, all the time we cannot ask the question what is good for science. We show what is science good for. And she has been saying that how investment into GDP, investment R&D led to GDP conversion 1 to 5. Can have a limited number of that nature today. Therefore, when we discuss these issues about innovations in space, I think we need to require a much larger canvas. And the most number of questions that I see in the question and answer system is all about careers. How I get a job, how I get a pay package, how that money is less paid. In formal innovation system today, okay, I'm not talking about the let me say, underpaid faculties of Karnataka institutions. They shouldn't exist at all. Forget about the individuals. Sometimes the institution should not exist. Today, if you take a faculty, full professor in a formal institution, and take the per capita GDP ratio, it's 13.6. That means 31 Indians are supporting one academic, full-time annual payment, cost to country. Therefore, we need to create that responsibility on the entire system, not just leave it as center is not doing, government is not doing, is not enough. But the question is, what, for example, SRM as an institution. Let me focus it in my friend K. Ramasamy. As an institution, you are in a position to sense the innovation potential of your students, your own students. And everybody is not equally endowed. Somebody is more, somebody is less. Now create your proposal, a partnership with the agencies which have schemes to nurture innovation potential in your institution. Have a mechanism through which that local action is converted into a result. For example, Science Entrepreneurship Park, incubation parks that the DSC supported, it turns out we established 71 academic institutions in the country. Incubation Park, where it was truly an innovation support system. And I reviewed them. It turns out for a 200 crore investment of the government of India, DST, the turnover for the country was truly 7,400 crores, 37-fold enhancement. Therefore, Incubation Park, for example, today, through a policy of the government, it is a corporate allowed for corporate social responsibility. Can you establish an Incubation Park in every educational enterprise where there are innovators who are willing to participate? And that is what I talked about. Local institutions must really create an ecosystem. And fundamentally, money alone is not enough. You require a mentor. The mentor is a very important part of the incubation exercise. And that is one thing to identify a project, identify a product, identify an innovation, but it'll die. There's a death valley through an innovation chain. So somebody has to do a business process collection of this. Therefore, I would personally like institutions like SRM, set up this incubation park, create the right mentors. Not all the faculty are suitable to be mentors. They understand business. And that is what we should really, you see, the entire enterprise system in California did not happen by the government. It happened by the university system, education system. I would like such discussions to happen here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Practically, we are doing that one. There is a entrepreneurship being with us, and we are hand-holding with the student. We are also giving the seed money from the university. At the same time, we are also hand-holding with the banking sector to give the venture capital from the banking sector. If there is a need, we are also training overseas. In fact, every year we are sending 25 to 40 students to California, UC Davis. They get the initial training, they come back, and then they handhold with the university, they establish the industry. We are trying that one.
Since you mentioned it, Dr. Desikan, maybe we could have invited one of those people who came from SRM, done this enterprise, built convert innovation into a larger success as a part of the panelists to go back and say, what did they lack?
That's an excellent idea. Maybe we'll keep it in mind for future sessions. Yes. Thank you.
You see, I'm an armchair scientist. Really, I'm calling it the extinguished scientist. But you require people who have a hands-on, found the shoe, where the shoe pinches. They should know. It'd be nice if in your future systems included somebody like what K. Ramasamy mentioned, Professor Ramasamy mentioned. He's a friend of mine. I don't even use the word sometimes, Professor. Sorry. But I think you can enroll them as a part of the panelists. It'll be really nice.
Certainly. I think Dr. Leena Wadia herself is an example of a person who started as a physicist and moved on into education, research, and sustainability and other things. So maybe you could talk a little bit, ma'am, about interdisciplinary movement of students and how the education basically prepares you for a wider horizon. And maybe other panelists can also join in after you give your comments on this.
I'll connect it to the fact that many, like Dr. Ramasamy observed, many of the questions here are related to careers and, what should I be doing and so on. And, so the first thing I want to tell all the students is that it's normal to not know what you want to do. There are the number of people who know what they want to do when they are very young. I want to be a physicist, or I want to be a dancer, or I want to be a musician. That number is relatively small. I think many other kids need more time to figure out what it is that they want to do. And this is why a good education, which gives you a broad-based training in whichever subjects you choose to study, and along with some exposure to society and its problems and how things work, and if you are in rural area, how the rural economy works, all of that, if you know, then even if you start working in a particular subject, you can always change course at a suitable point when it seems interesting to you. And today we are talking much more about entrepreneurship, and that's important because we hear so much about there not being enough jobs for people, and so one of the things that institutions can do is to provide aptitude tests and career guidance for their students. I think that helps a lot. There is, of course, as with any of these kind of solutions, there is also a bad side to it. You shouldn't be pushing a child to do something because your aptitude test says that that's what they want to do, but you can give some guidelines to a student saying that, look, these are your aptitudes and maybe this is what you want to do, but let the child then take the call themselves. There is that risk with aptitude tests that you can misdirect a child because your aptitude systems are not that good. But today I have started to see that there are many institutions that have pretty good aptitude testing, and because most of them are online, maybe some of them can be made available. MHRD can make some of them more broadly available, and students can take some of these and figure out. Also, career guidance is something that it's like a support system. I've seen universities have writing centers that help students learn how to write. Career guidance is another such service. It can be run by senior students, it can be run by alumni, it can be run by volunteers. We should add some of these support systems to help students figure out what they want to do. And at the end of the day, I think one thing is very clear that, for example, my father and all, they spent their entire career working in a certain industry, in fact, for one single company. That's not going to be true anymore. I mean, I think young people will keep moving as per their interests. So it's okay to start somewhere and then progressively find the area that you want to go. If you want to be a scientist and be a cosmologist, that may not work, but for most other people, it will work. That you start somewhere and then you slowly identify what your interests are and then go after it. I wonder if anyone else would like to add something.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Wadia. Would anyone like to add on to the things that she said?
Only one point I want to add, madam.
Yes.
The thing is that it is the parental pressure which is mostly against the wishes of the students. Every parent wants only the government job or the highly paid job anywhere else, rather than doing the local requirement, and they satisfied. Corona has given a very big lesson. I'm sure that the mindset will change now.
I have one. Anything else, Professor Ramaswamy?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question to Dr. Ramanujam. You mentioned that about mathematics education. What kind of career? I think maths is a very open and very wide field with many applications. Can you mention some of the career options that doing maths can get you?
Well, actually, I had many slides showing many areas. But so I don't want to go back to the slides, but I want to say that.
Could you please speak a little louder? Sorry to.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Yeah. Okay. So what I was trying to say was that it is mathematics. One is mathematics for its own sake. Becoming a mathematician, becoming a mathematical researcher. That, of course, is something wonderful if that's what you want to do in life. But mathematics as a career option, what I would say is that mathematics in combination with other things, right? With computing, with biology, with finance, with economics. I mean, today, these combinations of statistics and computing, these things, so not typically our undergraduate mathematics education in itself, in terms of opening up many attractive career options today, I would say this is probably not enough. I would say mathematics in conjunction with something else. Like, I think if you start looking at it as the option in that sense, mathematics and something else, or computing and something else, opens up tremendous possibilities today. And I think that's going to become more and more. And my suspicion is that these kind of combinations, in different areas of sciences and social sciences as well, I think combinations are going to become more and more important. So that's what I would say. I was mentioning that even education as a career, right? I think that's something to take very seriously. And I specifically meant math education, but I'm sure, all disciplines, probably there is something to say on that. But, I think in the new century, new ways of education and ways of thinking about education also will become important.
Yeah, but maths in particular is a very difficult subject for me. It was certainly very difficult. So you mentioned also innovating in education and so on. So would the panelists like to talk about innovations in education that could make these difficult subjects more easy or something like that? Would anyone like to, who would like to speak on that? Dr. Ramanujam?
I think, well, that's a big topic in its own right. But I mean, I was saying even in terms of, if you're looking at it in terms of whatever innovation in education for research, right? What I wanted to say was it's a matter of changing our pedagogy. And I think our pedagogy, rather than content-driven, has to become more process-driven. And one of the major problems is assessment, right? I mean, I think Dr. Wadia referred to it in her presentation. Now, it's very clear that almost everything is sacrificed at the altar of assessment. And unfortunately, it's not even assessment. By assessment, what people mean is evaluation. Attaching numbers, especially in a linear order, takes over as priority for everything else. I've seen that almost all educational experimentation, innovation finally falters because we want to bring it all down to one linear order, given numbers and comparison, ranking. I mean, if you seriously think about it, what is English plus science divided by 2, or science plus history plus? But we do that, right? We do ask, what is your overall percentage? But that overall percentage is completely meaningless if we actually think about it, right? But we do that, and that becomes the way of doing all our ranking. So I think probably the major innovation that needs to be done is really in assessment and evaluation. And I think when it comes to project evaluation and process evaluation, probably Dr. Ramaswamy will say that in SRM, all sorts of things are being done, but I believe that we are not even at the dawn. We are at the black night. I mean, we are still following practices from the Industrial Revolution era of and the colonial eras of examinations, and we're just doing that. And I think we have a long way to go. And we are able to encourage projects, but we don't know how to evaluate them. I know I'm sitting with Dr. Ramaswamy, who has done a lot of project evaluations in science and technology, but I hope if we can bring it down to our undergraduate classrooms and school classrooms, where we encourage students to do projects and evaluate them, assess them, in a very serious fashion. What we see on that front, I think, especially in undergraduate level, is pretty bad, I would say. So this is probably the biggest challenge, which will matter for innovation and research. But on the other hand, I see it as a tremendous opportunity. There is new technologies available, new methods available. If we are willing to make the change, I think it might be a major option.
Ramanujam, I will answer this in an anecdotal mode.
Okay.
I think the way we are looking at education has to be seen from the perspective of an educationist differently from the way we as decision makers look at it. We put evaluation, so in fact, the evaluation become precedent for education itself. Everywhere, competitive examination, joint examination, this examination, that examination, you don't care whether you get education or not, whether you perform on the test. The most of us who have done some reasonable science in this country have been impacted by some very inspiring teachers in high school, elementary school, and some level. And those guys were not standardized in the manner in which today we want to look at everything. Primarily, inspiring teachers are standing out. We should not standardize them into these bottlenecks. Unfortunately, they are the people who are going to be change agents in the education process. There are few. But the way teachers commanded social respect when we were children is very different from the way the teachers today in society are being looked at. Teaching is not a career. Teaching is an undertaking. It's a pursuit. And that is what we should bring back. Fundamentally, when we talk about pedagogy, this country should not necessarily look at what is happening elsewhere. After all, education is not due to this country. We had, in fact, I set up a specific program called PRIME for your own discipline called mathematics, pedagogy, innovation in mathematics education, because mathematics today among many students is a feared subject. Children are afraid of mathematics. That is not the way it was when we were studying. Therefore, the teachers have to use different models for bringing pedagogy innovations to suit the present generation of students whose attention span is very limited. They are not like we could wait for 1 hour, 2 hours and listen to them. Today, you cannot make a child work for 2 hours, listen to anybody. 15 minutes, they go away. So, in fact, I gave a lecture last year called Learning to Teach. I realized the students I had about 30 years ago were different from the teachers I teach, the students I teach now. Therefore, in pedagogy itself, we need to have an independent, country-specific model, because India and the United States are very different from the rest of the world. Because both countries are country of immigrants. They are truly, they learn a diversity of learning potentials. You cannot put everybody in standardized education model. I think we need to go back and look at what is it that this group is ideally suited for. We have Mathematician need not be converted to an IIT engineer. You can get a fantastic mathematician, put a second-rate engineer. That doesn't help. Therefore, society's own role in providing respect for teaching and making teaching a very serious profession. Even I'm very upset when Dr. Wadia was saying in Karnataka they have 10,000 rupees salary for a teacher. That's an insult. Insult to teaching, it's insult to education.
So, Wadia, would you like to come in? You're muted, I think. We can't hear you, Dr. Wadia.
No, let Dr. Ramaswamy finish then. Yeah.
I finished it.
Yeah, okay. In that case, what I wanted to say was that, this question on how do we teach students who have difficulty learning has been addressed a lot internationally in the context of digital education. So there is a beautiful TED Talk, TED Talks are easy to find, by Salman Khan of the Khan Academy. What he says is that, they found that if they record lectures and allow students to engage with the recording of the lecture and sort of play back, repeat, learn slowly in their own pace, they found that students are absorbing much more. The performance levels of students who are going up very high when you leave them with the recording on their own to navigate that material on their own. So that talk is worth watching. But this relates to something else which I learned very new, so I'd like to share with everyone, because I'm not an education researcher, so I did not know about Bloom's experiment on 2 sigma and so on, which is also about reinforcement. That with digital technologies, if we can record more lectures and allow students to hear it in class and then get it reinforced through watching the video again, or watch the video and come to class and discuss with the teacher, it has been found that there is much more learning happening for a much larger group of students. So I think that, and the pandemic has shown us that we really need to do much more in the digital space. The NPTEL was a very big experiment from IIT, which started as far back as 2003. Even today, the NPTEL lectures are being watched by people. So digital content is very, very valuable. So I think we should spend more time creating digital content. And then, it's also good, better use of teacher time that, the teachers actually then come to class and discuss, the difficulties with students one-on-one or in small groups, rather than lecturing the students, if the students are able to watch this digital content ahead of time. So this combination of availability of teacher and availability of recorded material is actually increasing the learning of students, even of difficult subjects. That's the message of Salman Khan's TED Talk. So I would recommend that to all the young people here. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment on the discussion that's been happening so far? Dr. Ramanujam, any comments?
I think that's fine.
Nothing, that's fine. Okay. Dr. Ramaswamy? K. Ramaswamy?
K. Ramaswamy. Okay, there are 2 Ramaswamis here.
Yes, actually,
always
I just wanted to mention that Dr. Ramanujam's father's name is also a Ramaswamy. So he's Ramaswamy Ramanujam.
Ramaswamy is too many of them.
It's not our fault. Our parents have decided to give that one. So
No. Nobody's fault. Fault is not in the name. Fault is in what we say.
yes.
So-
Practically, as scientists and academicians, we are observing a very great change for the present in India. That what was the syllabus and curriculum decided autonomously by individual universities are taken away now by AICT for engineering and UGC for most of the science and humanities. What it has done, it is only the central university that decides the syllabus, and most of the Indian Institute of Technology is deciding the engineering syllabus. But please realize, these two are not accredited. They have their own system of education. Nobody can verify, but they dictate the terms for all the other institutions. Why I'm saying this one, a teacher goes with the syllabus, what is dictated by AICT. A question paper model is also given. Textbook is also given, but a question paper setter is a different person. but we have not lost the annual system of evaluation even today. The external expert will evaluate and he will give the mark. What is the connect? This is always, everything is disconnect. And you take the old Gurukulam, from the beginning to the end, the teacher is always watching, evaluating. So a teacher is evaluating his own student and what was taught. Today, the Western world has come to that one, whether it is trimester or semester, same teacher who is offering the course is also setting the question paper and also evaluating. So there is a connect in the knowledge delivery, skill development, creativity, and they observe. Whereas here, whether the student is creative or not, may not be known for the evaluator. So this we have to change. Unless and otherwise we change, it is going to be very big difficult task. It is okay. It is now education is taken into the concurrent list. Both state and center are responsible. If this is possible, why don't they select one of the university and then make it as a central university? That they don't do. They always have separate IITs, separate NITs, separate NIIS. So by creating more institutions, you get only building and 40% of the staff members filled. 60% vacancies still exist in all those things. For want of teacher, the sufferer is the student. It is better that at least hereafter they can select one or two institutions and upgrade it and then invest in that one so that the knowledge upgradation is always positive. I'm not criticizing the possibility, I'm saying, because whatever has happened is happened. Now that we are thinking, where is a possibility for a new knowledge generation, new research capacity building, and then the new education policy. These things, let us think, investing in the existing institution so that it can come up and provide opportunity for the youngsters. With 52 crore youngsters, how we are going to provide employment?
Thank you. That's right. I'd like to thank Dr. Ramaswamy for bringing in the concept of diversity that I myself wanted to ask a question on that, but you spoke about it. Would anyone like to give concluding comments before we wind up? Just about a minute each.
Before somebody else concludes, I wish to reflect on what other Ramaswamy, the more wise Ramaswamy said about Macaulay. Macaulay is supposed to have praised our educational system which existed in 1750. The question here is when Dr. Wadia talked about educational contents, they're delivered through digital model and in a personalized model. Can you get a hybrid? Innovate the Gurukul experience into digital mode of learning. That requires today completely different method of delivering the result. And that requires digital innovation, it requires pedagogy innovation and so on, because there's no point in saying that somebody else can change our methods. Who asked us not to change? We have to change ourselves. Therefore, to the panel, particularly the people who are educationists in this panel, could I ask a question? Could we find a method of bringing Gurukul experience in the present post-COVID digital learning process, online method? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for one comment, just for 1 minute each, maybe?
Maybe I'll say something. I just wanted to say that, you know, the education policy also, and Dr. K. Ramaswamy said this, that, you know, we should have research universities, and we should have research universities with large enrollment. And that can only happen if some of the very good universities, both public and private, are allowed to grow, are allowed to open different disciplines, you know, freely, and, you know, and introduce humanities and so on. And so that there is a lot of interdisciplinary research, not just professional fields, but professional and humanities, so that, and social sciences, so that you have problem solving for Indian society, actually. So I heard some time ago a talk on monsoon modeling in ICTS, and the people were saying that the monsoon in India is very special to India. So the developing countries are not going to model monsoon for us. We need to model our own monsoon so that we are prepared because India is very vulnerable to climate change. So things like that, so research universities are very important. And I think I endorse what Dr. T. Ramaswamy said at the end, that we should look for innovative pedagogical experiences for students on the digital medium. I think, the digital medium has gotten fast-tracked because of the pandemic, and people have seen its value. Of course, we need to deal with the digital divide, but we also need to come up with new pedagogies for this thing. I don't think there are solutions yet. I think people are trying different things. We'll know in a while. Thank you.
Can I add one sentence to that, Shubhan?
Yes, please. I was muted. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So I think innovations in the digital medium are absolutely essential. I would just like to add innovations in working with soil and metal and wood, and because for us, I think working with them at school level is also new innovation. This is not something classical, or it's something new for us. So innovations in that, hands-on with physical material, and the physicality of it is extremely important for children. And I think not children, I mean students at all levels, really. So I would say innovations in that I would like to add along with, which is very non-digital, but I would say, and working with ideas and problem solving, of course. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. If everyone has said what they wanted to say, maybe we could just close now with a thanks to all of you. It has been a really enlightening panel discussion. I learned a lot of stuff here, and I'm sure viewers also. Thank you all for being with us and sharing all your valuable thoughts on behalf of the Hindu and SRM institutes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Engineering, Medical and Health Sciences, Management, Dental, Science and Humanities, Law, Agriculture Sciences, Hotel Management. Admissions open.